Hello friends and fellow travelers, and thank you for joining me on this 2020 no-buy journey. I made it an entire month without buying anything or breaking any of my no-buy rules. This is my January check-in, and I'm really excited to report everything that I learned this month. I do want to mention that I didn't post my normal video that I was supposed to yesterday. This was Sunday. And this would have been the video reporting my week 5 challenge, which was to use my Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction, 1 palette, 1 week. And that is because I didn't take any pictures last week. And the reason for that is because I decided to let my eyelash extensions fall out. I decided not to get them refilled anymore. That was one of the things that I had put on the okay to buy list at the beginning of my no-buy year. And after I did my finances, and even though eyelashes were only not even 2% of my take-home salary last year, I think it was like 1.9%, it's still $1,800 a year. So I kind of did a cost-benefit analysis on it, and I decided that while I'm in this period of saving and debt payoff, that I'm not going to do that. I just feel like it's wasteful. I've done them for 3 years now, and when I think about how that's almost $6,000, I would rather save that money or put it toward my extra debt payoff. So I'm going through kind of an adjustment period with that, just getting my natural lashes back, and they seem very short since I've had those eyelash extensions for like 3 years. So I just didn't feel like taking pictures of all my looks. I did use the palette for the entire week. Once my eyelashes are back to natural, I will continue on with the project of taking pictures of my looks every day and then making a video out of those and reporting those. So on to my check-in after my first month of being on a no-buy year. My last video that I made, I had reported that I kind of changed my goals a little bit. I decided not only to save up a $15,000 emergency fund, but also pay off my car this year. My first month of my no-buy was almost kind of forced. I paid off a pretty huge chunk of old debt and a pretty big bill that had been kind of floating over my head for quite some time. Because of that, I wasn't able to put anything in my savings account, but that debt is now paid off, and it's a lot of anxiety and worry off my plate. And I'm gonna do the same thing in February. So February, I'm not gonna have a lot of wiggle room as far as saving is concerned either. So since I didn't have a lot of extra spending money, when I did have the kind of desire to buy something, the money wasn't in my bank account to buy it. And I was kind of wondering if that was the reason why I didn't break any of my no-buy rules this month. But I also remembered that my bank account wasn't totally empty. And in the past, when my bank account was as low as it was this month, I would have spent that money on junk food and junk food binges, but I didn't do that this month. So I do have to give myself credit for doing that. Beginning this no-buy year, there were a couple of triggers that I was highly aware of. And those were my walk to and from work, watching YouTube, and that next Pat McGrath Mothership release. And I want to just kind of talk about the first two right now. On my way to and from work, I park in a parking garage, and to get to my work, I have to walk through a little outdoor mall. Walking through that mall, I pass a Uniqlo, a corner bakery, a Rocky Mountain chocolate factory, a super cute little boho boutique that has lured me in several times last year and got several $100s of my money. an ice cream parlor, and to top it all off, Sephora is the last thing that I have to pass before I open the door to go into the parking garage. And starting this no-buy, I was pretty worried about that because last year, if I was stressed out after work, there were several times that I would go in and buy, candy at Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, or go into Sephora and kind of space out there and end up spending $100, $150, $200. But I didn't feel the pull of those places like I was afraid that I would. Watching YouTube again, I was afraid to watch my favorite and best friends on YouTube. Last year, it wasn't uncommon for me to just pause a YouTube video and go out and buy whatever the person was talking about. And every time I had the impulse to do that, I just went ahead and took a screenshot of whatever the product was, and yesterday I added all of that stuff up and it was $400. And again, I can't guarantee that I wouldn't have made any of those purchases had I had the money in my bank account to do so. And right now, I just have to keep in mind that I am rewriting the neurological pathways in my brain. My best friend explained this to me one time very eloquently, and this pertains to neuroplasticity. The pathways in our brains are like a meadow, and in a meadow, if you keep taking the same path over and over and over again, it becomes very well trodden, and it becomes the easiest pathway to get from point A to point B. If you stop using that pathway in that meadow, the grass starts to grow over it, and it starts to become a little bit more difficult to take, and you start taking a different path through that meadow. The grass gets beaten down. That path becomes easier to take. Our brains are the same way. So right now I'm just keeping in mind that the only pathway it feels like that's in my brain right now is the path that leads to instant gratification. And it's the pathway I've been taking my entire life. Like, I have rarely thought about delayed gratification or consequences, or thought logically about how my actions now impact my future. Right now, in these months that, I don't exactly have a lot of money to spend on instant gratification, I'm kind of letting the grass start to grow on that pathway. I've put up some little traffic cones and some caution tape and said, this pathway is closed for reclamation. And there are thoughts that are jumping over that caution tape and trying to take that pathway, but there's these little park rangers that are in the meadow of my mind that are catching those thoughts and saying no, giving them a ticket, kicking them out of the park, and saying, don't come back here. And I'm very just aware of that. I'm aware of that process. I've become very aware of when I get those impulses, and stopping those impulses. And I've gone through the motions several times of putting stuff into my shopping carts and almost purchasing them, but not clicking that purchase button and saying, wait, this is an impulse, this is not okay, this is against the rules, you can't do this. And I feel like every time that happens, a little blade of grass might poke up, and it's going to make it more difficult to walk down that pathway. And the pathway that I'm trying to cultivate in my mind is that pathway to, delayed gratification, to logical thought, to thinking about the consequences, to remembering my goals and my future, and thinking about what is the best thing to do right now in order to achieve those goals. I also wanted to mention that once I went through that exercise of figuring out my finances, how much I had spent, figuring out that I had the ability to save up my $15,000 and pay off my car this year, that gave me hope. Before this year started, I was completely hopeless as far as retirement and everything went. And so that was another reason why I think that I didn't save, or that I chose that path to instant gratification all the time, because I was like, well, what's the point? What's the point? I'm going to be working my entire life anyways, so I mean, I may as well just get this thing right now, or I may as well just do this thing right now. Another thing I'm very aware of is my need to find balance between this future that I didn't think that I was going to have and the present, and not depriving myself and making myself feel miserable right now, so much so that it might cause me to fail this whole thing. Before I started this journey, I decided that I was going to do it back in October of 2019. And leading up to that, I read several books and I came across this paper titled Possessions and the Extended Self. But this paper really spoke to me. It resonated with me. And it's a 4-part paper. In this next month, I am going to go ahead and analyze this paper and do a 4-part series on how this paper kind of applies to my shopping habits and my shopping addiction. And I'm really excited about that. I also, before the year started, purchased this book, I Shop, Therefore I Am. And I'm not really the kind of person that purchases books. I consider books to be clutter. I will either read ebooks or listen to audiobooks, but I can't remember, this book either was super expensive on ebook or I couldn't find it on ebook, and it definitely wasn't on audiobook, and it wasn't at any of the libraries near me. So I found it used for like $5, so I just went ahead and purchased it. And I'm pretty excited to dig into this book too. I haven't had a chance to, but there are several chapters that I think will get a few videos out of those. That's kind of where I see my my channel going in the near future. I'm still gonna do like my palette reviews. I have a few more palettes after the Pat McGrath ones are finished. I really like the way that this channel is going so far, and just the simple act of me just making these videos and then watching myself and editing myself and listening to the things that I say, it's almost like therapy. Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to mention. All of this research and this kind of stuff, I'm not doing that as a substitute for therapy. I have decided that I will go back to therapy. I've gone to about 3 years of therapy in the last decade. That was mostly centered around a man and a relationship, and I would like to get back into therapy to kind of focus on the shopping addiction and the food addiction. I think that will be highly beneficial to me. That's all for this video, and again, thank you for being with me on this journey, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Open up, you open up. Bitch, you won't be BM. We should be closer than friends.